Hey everyone, welcome back again. Today we are going to be looking at the Akbronco. This is a long forgotten weapon that has an augment behind the rank 4 Entrati Syndicate on Deimos. Damza-Vati gives 240% viral. You can't add any more viral into it unless you mod Cold and Toxin itself. It doesn't really matter where you slot this augment in because the other elements will combine first and this viral will always be last. We are going to be running Hornet Strike as usual, and then our two important multi-shot and fire rate mods, Barrel Diffusion and Lethal Torrent. Now the other mod we want to run is Seeker so that we have punch through, since this is a shotgun that has an okay amount of status, not fantastic, but running a higher amount of punch through will let you spread the armor stripping a lot more effectively. We're going to be running Primed Expel Corrupted because I'm benchmarking against Corrupted Heavy Gunners, and then our corrosive element is going to come from Pistol Pestilence and Jolt so that we can increase our status more instead of using the two 90/90s. The augment will be in its own slot here. It doesn't really matter where I put it on the line, but then it's 240% viral, which gives it higher weighting and lets us stack our damage multiplier from the procs faster. So I'm going to spawn the Corrupted Heavy Gunners at 145 here, and we're going to take a look at a damage test. I'm going to be shooting their heads, and this is without any other buffs except just what the weapon has by itself. So you can see it seems to take about 4 shots or so to take out the heavy gunners if I'm aiming at the head, which isn't too bad. It's a little bit behind on the meta these days where, say, you could just prime them up with a KNukor for condition overload on your melees, but it seems to get the job done. I don't really know what else I would have run in here originally, so it seems like it's a pretty big improvement, but then again, nobody ever used the Akbronco before since it was just so bad. And at most it just seems to bring it up to the usable tier. Now we're going to look at another build. This one has Magnum Force and Pure Heat instead of building Corrosive. I can't fit on Seeker here because of my polarities, but since we are looking at just single target damage right now, that is fine. So I'm going to spawn them again, and let's just go back up and shoot some heads. You can immediately tell the heat proc actually makes it a little bit difficult to keep my aim trained on their heads, and there seems to be some damage problems here as it's taking, I'd say, 5 to 7 shots to take them out, depending on when the heat wants to proc and start stripping their armor. Another thing to remember is heat doesn't strip armor until a full second after it procs, so you really don't get the full benefit if you start spraying right away, and this slows down the TTK by a fair amount. Based on this, it seems clear that we should just be building for Corrosive and Viral, since Corrosive not only strips their armor immediately upon proc, but it also gets an armor ignore due to having a damage bonus against the ferrite armor that these Corrupted Heavy Gunners have. So now I'm going to go over what type of Arcanes you could run with this. For normal gameplay, we're going to be looking at Arcane Precision. Since we are not concerned about any Archwing bugs that might show up in hunts, and this is just for normal play, we're going to be using a max ranked Arcane Precision instead of rank 4. We're going to go over an Eidolon build much later in the video, so don't worry, stay tuned to see that in the future. The other arcane I'm going to run is Arcane Pistolier, so that once I hit that first headshot, I have a little bit more forgiveness on being able to spam body shots if I miss the head so that I can spread the status a little bit better. And we're going to be running this same build on the Corrosive Viral. Now let's spawn the Corrupted Heavy Gunners and test this one more time. So I'm going to come up to them and proc my Arcane Precision in the head, and then I'm going to start shooting on one that has full HP. So you can see that first shot did so much damage, and it only takes 3 shots to take them out. So you can see I procced my Arcane Pistolier, which lets me be a little bit more spammy on my shots, and this allows me to get similar TTKs without necessarily aiming at the head, and I don't have to worry as much about the ammo economy. I can always just get an easy headshot kill again later on and proc it again once it expires, even though I cannot refresh this arcane. So as you can see, there's no issues using the Akbronco now on a Rivenless build due to this new augment. I wouldn't say it's completely game changing, but it definitely brings it back into the realm of where the Akbronco is usable. If we take a look at other possible builds you can bring in associated with your frame, well, on my Volt I could even Shock Trooper myself for more corrosive procs as well as corrosive damage, and a Vig swap for some extra base damage. As you can see, I nearly one-shot them at this point, and actually that one there I just completely one-shot in one go. As long as I place my shield and I shoot them in the head and I get, say, a crit here or there, it should just be one tap to the face to take them out. Now this is very nice to have, but it's very rare that you're going to be running all these buffs at the same time. I guess this shows the potential of the weapon, but I really would have preferred something stronger that can achieve something like this without having to stack my ability buffs, vigor swap, as well as all my arcane buffs. Likewise, you could achieve a much better outcome, honestly, if you only used half the weapon. If you were using Bronco instead, you could pick up the Dizzying Rounds augment that dropped from this season's Nightwave, and if you put that on, it actually permanently opens your enemies to finishers once you shoot them within range. And you can use this with Marked for Death that you can grab on your helmet, easily nuking the entire room. This would be much more effective than killing enemies one by one or just with a little bit of punch through using the Akbronco. So I feel like this weapon is still overshadowed by other methods to kill hordes of enemies such as KNukor and Condition Overload. Contagion could achieve a similar goal, as well as if you were using just half the weapon with Dizzying Rounds, you could also nuke the entire room. So at this point, Akbronco seems like it's the slowest method if you compare to the current meta, but if you just really want to try this weapon out or you've always been hoping for it to become useful again in the current state of the game, you might as well pick up the Augment to try it out. Now let's take a look at an Eidolon build for this weapon. As you can see here, the Augment fits perfectly in the last slot. I have no use for crit chance on this weapon since it has base 6%, which means mods such as Primed Pistol Gambit as well as Hydraulic Crosshairs are completely useless. This frees up 2 slots on the weapon where I'm choosing to place in Hollow Point and the Augment itself. If we're looking at an earlier build without the Augment was released, the only other mod I can really fit in here is Convulsion, and it honestly isn't that much worse than Viral. Because of how Eidolons are weak to radiation if they have any armor remaining, you have your 75% bonus against their armor as well as 25% bonus against their health type. This functions as a multiplicative factor, so you're going to end up doing over 2 times multiplier with that extra 90% electric combining into the radiation. This is going to come out to be an extra normalized 200% in elementals worth or so, whereas your 240% viral is hitting neutral against the Eidolon, so that's only 240% normalized elemental damage. The only saving grace I could say here is it has much lower mod cost, so you might be able to get away with one less forma, but I doubt the small damage increase of a 40% normalized elemental advantage is going to really make a difference in the number of shots you need to take. I think you'd have to balance out thinking, do you want to save one forma or do you want to spend 20k standing on this augment? Maybe you can pick it up once you're all capped out, but right now it doesn't really seem to make much sense for me to use this for Eidolons, but I can try it if you want me to. Feel free to let me know if you'd like to see an Akbronco hunt with a new augment. I've already done an Eidolon hunt with the Bronco before, so I expect this to perform at least as well or even better. If you're interested in seeing that run, just click right here. Otherwise, I can move on to testing out the other new weapons and the augments. We're also going to run a different set of arcanes for the Eidolon build. Arcane Precision in a 6x, the limb breaks happen in faster than 18-second rotation, and I cannot refresh this buff, which means if I keep using the rank 5, it will reach a point that I'm pushed so late to the limb break that I cannot proc this arcane in time. So instead we will be running rank 4 for the 15-second buff duration to make sure that it is always expired when I need to set it up again. Pistolier is useless since there's nothing to kill in the hunt to set it up, so we're going to bring Avenger instead since I'm missing so much crit chance and I really need crits to make this weapon perform. So before I spawn these bombards, I'm going to have to make sure to take off corrosive projection on my Volt so that this test is standardized and simulating a 0 CP tear list. I'm going to also place on my Darza for the extra crit chance since the weapon has such low base crit and we're going to be depending on this during the hunt. Now I'm going to spawn my level 110 Drakkar Manic Bombards. I'm going to set up my Shock Trooper and then get nice and close to them. I'm going to set up my Arcane Precision to simulate shooting the head before the shields go down. And I'm going to set my shield up, proc Vig swap, and shoot the thigh. You can see that they die extremely quickly. which means a Riven is completely unnecessary for this, since the damage is so excessive. As long as I have my crit buffs up and I'm managing my arcane precision properly, they should die very, very quickly. Now you can immediately tell as soon as my cat's eye buff drops, which is basically the same thing as a covenant to simulate in this scenario, it takes way more shots to take out the bombard. So what this means is if I don't crit, I'm basically hitting like a wet noodle. If you want a Riven for normal play on this Akbronco, you're probably going to be looking for damage, multi-shot, and one of the elementals to either buff your viral damage higher or your corrosive damage. If you don't mind the amount of ragdolling going on with their heads, then you can try picking up a heat as your elemental role as well, but I would prefer just sticking to viral and corrosive. If you're still looking for a Riven to do Eidolons with this with, which I really don't find necessary, I guess it will let you one-shot limbs with the right roll, you'd definitely still be looking for your standard crit damage multi-shot neg, since crit chance is useless on this weapon. We have so many sources of base damage such as Hornet Strike, Magnum Force, Big Swap, and Arcane Precision, it really doesn't make sense to look for damage roll on your Riven. A crit damage multi-shot neg would not only be more expensive by a fair amount, it really wouldn't make a difference in the grand scheme of things versus a dual neg crit damage multi-shot neg Riven. Thank you for watching and see you all next time.